This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, and joining me once again for this edition of The New World Next Week is James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. James, good to have you back on the program.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
All right, well, for those of you out there who don't know, this is the weekly video news update series where we're going to be looking at the news and views and conspiracies and cover-ups and myths and memes that shape our daily lives. And today, I guess we're going to go for the Grand Slam home run tour of the Media Monarchy Kingdom. So we're going to be hitting up all three of James's excellent websites. So let's start with today. Let's start with cyberspacewar.com. What have you got going on cyberspacewar.com today, James?
Amazingly enough, posted up last Saturday by way of the register.co.uk, CERN scientist arrested for alleged terror connections. An atomic physicist who worked at the European Organization for Nuclear Research for 6 years has been arrested on suspicion that he had links to an al-Qaeda affiliate in North Africa. The unnamed man, and I don't believe still now several days after this report we have a name, the unnamed man had been assigned to an analysis project for the organization better known as CERN since 2003. This came from a CERN press release. He had no contact with anything that could be used for terrorism, it added. He was arrested last Thursday in the French city of Vienne. His detention came as two brothers also suspected of having ties to al-Qaeda were arrested in Vienne on a warrant issued by an anti-terrorism judge at the Paris prosecutor's office. Now, of course, CERN came online last year. It's the Large Hadron Collider. It was downed by a faulty electrical connection between two magnets in the 17-mile donut-shaped atom smasher. It has been under repair ever since.
Okay, this is just a bizarre story in so many ways, but so the story implies that he was working on the Large Hadron Collider, or was he involved in some other project that had nothing to do with that?
They are saying he had nothing to do with any of the sort of physical workings, that he was just an analyst, and that all the information and things that they work on, they claim is all released in the public domain anyway, so there's nothing he could have done that would have been terror-related.
But just to flesh this out for people, this Large Hadron Collider was this big project that they spent years working on, and just as they went to boot it up to start using it, it basically stopped working, and they had to take it down for repairs.
They did, and the last update I have on this goes back to February of this year, with the CERN Atom Smasher relaunch delayed until September, it now being, of course, October 14th, and there is still no end-of-the-world Atom Smasher online yet.
Right, well, this is just such a bizarre story in so many ways, but I guess one way I saw recently, there's a Reuters article talking about how a lot of physicists are joking that it must have been God himself doesn't want people to find the God particle, the Higgs boson particle or whatever they're looking for at the Large Hadron Collider. So that's why it doesn't work, but maybe it might have been al-Qaeda terrorists, who knows. What a strange and bizarre story. Well,
it is. Well, and you mentioned two things there that possibly don't exist, but that's a whole other conversation.
AlQaedaDoesn'tExist.com. Okay, and well, let's move on. Let's look at the second one. I understand we're going to look at something from FoodWorldOrder.com.
Yeah, we're gonna shift gears and hop over to FoodWorldOrder.com for a little bit of an update on something we hit several months ago on the site. This now coming from Mercola.com and asking the question: why are Monsanto insiders now appointed to protect our food safety? This basically goes over former Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack, who's now the Secretary of Agriculture, despite massive public outcry, and there's things from Democracy in Action and OrganicConsumers.org. This guy has always been in bed with the industry lobbies. We then had Michael Taylor, a former vice president former vice president of public policy and chief lobbyist at Monsanto. He is now the new senior advisor for the U.S. FDA. The third one is possibly the Pennsylvania Agriculture Secretary Dennis Wolf, may be appointed to the new Undersecretary of Agriculture for Food Safety. All these guys all connect to Monsanto and the lobbies and the GMOs. It's essentially a bunch of foxes being appointed to guard the U.S. healthcare and food industry hen houses, and these foxes all have massive connections to Monsanto. And we joke, of course, their motto should be "No food shall be grown that we don't own."
Well, yeah, you joke about it, but it's not so far from the truth. And then, of course, this is something that I guess is not particularly new. I mean, this has certainly happened before, where people who are well connected to Monsanto end up in the FDA that's supposedly regulating these types of corporations. But I guess maybe it's the concentration and the number of people that's the big story here.
I think what really hits me is that it's now coming in an era from our new progressive Democratic president here in the States. It's one of those stories for me that I find amazing that the hardcore supporters don't really want to talk about. They don't really want to talk about the wars he's not ending, and they don't really seem to want to get too much into all these things that essentially fly in the face of things they fight and believe in.
Right, and I guess, well, our illustrious Nobel laureate, Mr. Obama, promised that he wasn't going to be appointing any lobbyists in his administration, and now we have all these Monsanto people getting in key positions, So
all that info is available up on foodworldorder.com, and we'll shift gears and hit the main site, MediaMonarchy.com, for a story posted Monday, October 12th. This comes from Raw Story. Woman imprisoned for selling to Saddam was working for the CIA. A Detroit area businesswoman serving a 6-year sentence in federal prison for selling goods to Iraq during the embargo against Saddam Hussein was unwittingly working for the Central Intelligence Agency. According to NBC affiliate out of Detroit, Michigan, WDIV, Dawn Hanna of Rochester Hills, Michigan, was working for a CIA contractor when she arranged for telecom equipment to be sent to the Middle East in 2002 and 2003. This seems to be another classic case, and it seems, in a way, all our three main stories here are all about the collusion and corruption going on. And sometimes who you're working for isn't who you think you're working for.
Apparently not, but again, this is a bit of a strange story, because if the CIA were attempting to set up this thing to give bugged telecommunications equipment to Saddam in the run-up to the war...
I left that out.
Sorry?
I missed that part. Yeah, they were essentially trying to sell them equipment that would have a back door so they could spy.
Right, and so then they go and bust the person through whom they're actually selling this, or was this another... I guess this must have been another arm of the intelligence wing that caught onto this and arrested her. And it's one arm of the states not knowing what the other arm is doing, which is, it's really bizarre. But then you take a look in, for example, at the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, where, of course, they hire the guy to be an informant for the FBI, and he ends up giving the actual bomb-making materials to the actual bombers, and he thinks he's being set up by the FBI, so he starts recording his conversations, and you can go listen to them online. So I guess the moral of the story is don't trust when you get recruited for an intelligence agency, and even if you're not physically recruited, I guess you have to be aware of who you're working for. Mm-hmm. Another interesting story.
All these things are all available online. Like you just said, you can listen to those tapes of Ahmad Salem related to WTC 93. All these stories here, again, I try and provide a lot of contextual information on all three sites.
Right. And I understand you've got an interview coming out shortly on MediaMonarchy.com.
Just a mere couple of hours ago, I had a great talk with Zachary Fillingham of geopoliticalmonitor.com, and that one should be out up on MediaMonarchy.com in the next day or so. Geopoliticalmonitor.com is a great site that both myself and yourself have created a sort of loose partnership, because, again, many hands make light work.
All right, and on one final note, I guess we should note here at the very end that The Guardian is ripping apart the Telegraph story that we reported on last week about Ahmadinejad and his Jewish roots, saying their headline is Ahmadinejad has no Jewish roots, and basically saying that the Telegraph weaved that story out of whole cloth. So people, check it out for yourself, and don't trust what the corporate-controlled media is telling you. All right, James Evan Pilato, thanks again for coming on the program.
Thanks so much, man. This has been great.